He thought the badge made him untouchable. He had no idea the woman in front of him was about to prove otherwise. The lunch rush moved like a current through downtown Atlanta, fast shoes on polished sidewalks, coffee cups in hand, traffic lights blinking through the warm spring haze. Horns sounded in short, impatient bursts. A food truck on the corner sent the smell of grilled onions into the air. Office towers reflected the noon sun like mirrors, and everyone seemed too busy to notice anyone else. Everyone except Officer Ryan Cole. Ryan stood beside his patrol SUV with the posture of a man who believed the street belonged to him. Tall, pressed uniform, dark sunglasses, jaw tight with practiced authority. He scanned faces the way some men scan for mistakes. To him, the city was divided into two groups, people who mattered, and people who needed to be reminded who was in charge. Then he saw her. Naomi Carter stepped out of a cafe carrying a small paper bag and an iced tea. She wore a navy blazer, fitted slacks, and low heels built for walking city blocks. Her curls were pinned neatly back. Her pace was calm, unhurried, the kind of calm that unsettles people who mistake noise for power. Ryan's eyes narrowed. She moved with confidence, and confidence in the wrong person always bothered him. He crossed the sidewalk in quick strides and raised a hand. "Stop right there." Heads turned for half a second, then turned away again. In a city, strangers learn not to stare. Naomi stopped and faced him. She did not flinch. She did not ask why. She simply waited. Ryan gestured toward the paper bag. "Where'd you get that?" His tone carried accusation before the question had even landed. Naomi glanced at the logo on the side of the bag, then back at him. "From the cafe behind me." Her voice was even, smooth, impossible to rattle. Ryan took another step closer. "Funny. We just got a report about a stolen wallet near this block." He let the words hang there, baiting the crowd to listen. A man in a grey suit slowed near the curb. Two women outside the coffee shop paused mid-conversation. Someone lifted a phone. Naomi looked at the officer, then at the people gathering around the edges of the moment. "And that has something to do with me?" she asked. Ryan smirked. "We'll see." He motioned toward her handbag. "Set it down." There was no legal reason. No real evidence. Just instinct sharpened by bias and made lazy by habit. Naomi placed the bag gently at her feet. Not hurried. Not fearful. Controlled. Ryan expected anger. He expected nervousness. He expected the trembling explanations he usually got when people felt trapped. Instead, she gave him something far more dangerous. A small smile. It was brief, almost private, like she had remembered a joke no one else understood. Ryan's expression hardened. "You think this is funny?" Naomi's eyes held steady on him. "No," she said softly. "I think it's familiar." The sidewalk seemed to grow quieter. Even the traffic sounded farther away. Ryan crouched, opened her handbag, and began sorting through neatly organized contents with theatrical suspicion. A notebook. A charger. Keys. A leather wallet. A silver pen. He pulled the wallet free and opened it halfway, barely glancing inside before tossing it onto the hood of his SUV. "Still checking," he said loudly for the crowd. Naomi took a sip of her iced tea as if she were waiting for a delayed train. That smile returned, faint and unreadable. Ryan noticed it and felt something he did not like, uncertainty. "You need to wipe that look off your face," he snapped. Naomi tilted her head slightly. "Which look?" A few people nearby exchanged glances. One man coughed to hide a laugh. Ryan's ears reddened. He grabbed the wallet again, irritated now, determined to win a contest no one else knew had begun. This time, as he opened it wider, a dark blue credential sleeve became visible for just a second. Gold lettering caught the sunlight. Ryan froze, though only for a breath. Naomi watched him with the same calm smile. "Officer," she said, almost kindly, "You should really read the back." Ryan stared at the credential sleeve as if it might change shape if he blinked hard enough. The gold seal reflected in his sunglasses, sharp and unmistakable, but pride has a way of delaying comprehension. He snapped the wallet shut and straightened his shoulders. "Nice prop," he said, louder than necessary. "People carry fake badges all the time." Naomi did not move. The city breeze lifted a loose strand of hair near her temple, and she tucked it back with the same patience she had shown from the start. "Then open it again," she replied. Her tone was calm, almost generous, the way a teacher might speak to a student refusing an obvious answer. The crowd around them had grown thicker now. A delivery driver rested his hand truck against a light pole. 2 college students stood shoulder to shoulder with their phones raised chest high. A woman in running shoes whispered, "This is not going to end well." Ryan heard it. His jaw tightened. He reopened the credential with stiff fingers. This time he read every line. Naomi Carter, United States Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division, Senior Field Compliance Director, Temporary Special Review Authority. His throat worked once before he could speak. The letters did not care whether he believed them. They remained exactly what they were. Naomi watched his expression shift from certainty to confusion, then from confusion to something colder and far less stable. Fear often enters quietly. "You should keep reading," she said. Ryan turned the card over. Printed beneath the federal seal was a line in bold text, "Authorized to conduct active oversight of local law enforcement procedures and officer conduct." His face lost color under the noon sun. Around them, the crowd sensed the change before they understood it. Murmurs rolled outward like ripples in water. "What is that?" someone asked. "Federal," another voice answered. Ryan handed the credential back too quickly, as though it had become hot. "If this is some kind of misunderstanding," he began, but the confidence was gone now. Naomi slipped the credential into her wallet and placed it neatly inside her bag. "It is not a misunderstanding," she said. "It is documentation." Ryan glanced toward his patrol SUV, toward the street, toward anywhere but her eyes. His radio crackled at his shoulder. Dispatch called his unit number once, then again. He ignored it. Naomi noticed. "You might want to answer that," she said. Ryan pressed the talk button with a hand that no longer looked steady. "Unit 12. Dispatch came back immediately. "Officer Cole, respond now. Captain Lewis is requesting your status." "Repeat, immediate response." Several people in the crowd exchanged looks. Ryan lowered the radio slowly. "Captain Lewis," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Naomi took another sip of iced tea. "He sounds concerned." The students near the curb laughed under their breath. Ryan shot them a glare, but it carried none of its earlier weight. "Power, once cracked, rarely reveals in public." He turned back to Naomi and lowered his voice. "Maybe we can clear this up privately." Naomi's smile returned, small and knowing. "You wanted an audience 5 minutes ago." That line landed harder than shouting ever could. The woman in running shoes nodded to herself. A businessman near the curb quietly stepped closer so he would not miss a word. Ryan tugged at his collar. The spring heat suddenly seemed personal. "I was following procedure," he said. Naomi's eyes never left him. "No. You were following assumption." Silence settled over the sidewalk. Even the food truck operator leaned out of his window. Then 3 black SUVs turned the corner in a tight line and stopped beside the curb with practiced precision. Doors opened almost at once. Men and women in business attire stepped out with badges at their belts and earpieces in place. Behind them came Captain Daniel Lewis, moving faster than anyone had ever seen him move. He looked from Naomi to Ryan to the crowd of phones recording everything. Then he exhaled like a man who already knew the cost of the next 60 seconds. Naomi set her empty cup on the hood of the patrol SUV and smiled one more time. "Officer Cole," she said softly, "your real inspection starts now." Captain Daniel Lewis stopped 3 feet from Naomi Carter and lowered his head with the kind of respect that cannot be rehearsed. "Director Carter," he said, breath still uneven from the hurried walk, "we were not expecting the field review to begin here." Naomi glanced at the crowd, then at Ryan Cole, who now looked like a man trying to remember where he had left his confidence. "That makes 2 of us," she answered. A few people nearby smiled. Ryan stood rigid beside his patrol SUV, hands clasped too tightly in front of him. He wanted to appear composed, but panic has small habits. It lives in blinking too often, swallowing too hard, staring at nothing. Captain Lewis turned to him slowly. "Officer Cole, remove your radio and place it on the hood." Ryan hesitated for one dangerous second. Then he obeyed. The click of the radio hitting metal sounded louder than traffic. Naomi noticed the phone still recording from every angle. "Please let them continue," she said to no one in particular. "Transparency is useful." The students near the curb nearly grinned out loud. Ryan looked around as if the sidewalk itself had betrayed him. "Captain, I can explain," he said. Lewis did not raise his voice. He did not need to. "You will have an opportunity to explain after you listen." He faced Naomi again. "We can move this to the station." Naomi shook her head once. "No." The stop began in public. "The review stays in public." That sentence settled over the block like weather. The federal staff who had arrived with her spread out quietly, taking notes, speaking into secure headsets, collecting witness names. They moved with calm efficiency, which only made Ryan look more frantic by comparison. Naomi stepped toward the patrol SUV and ran one finger across the hood where her empty cup still Saturday. "Officer Cole believed I matched suspicion," she said. "I would like to know the specific legal basis for that conclusion." Ryan cleared his throat. "There was a report of a stolen wallet." Naomi nodded. "Describe the suspect." Ryan opened his mouth, then closed it. Captain Lewis looked at him without blinking. "Answer." Ryan shifted his weight. "I did not receive a full description yet." Naomi's smile returned, faint as sunrise. "So you detained a citizen without one?" The crowd murmured again. A delivery driver said, "Wow," to no one in particular. Ryan tried another route. "She was acting nervous." Naomi raised one eyebrow. "I was holding iced tea." Even Captain Lewis looked away for a second to hide his reaction. The students laughed openly this time. Ryan's face reddened. Naomi took a slim notebook from her bag and opened it to a page already marked. "Interesting detail," she said. "At 12:14 p.m., I wrote that Officer Ryan Cole had been parked half a block away for 11 minutes observing pedestrians and approaching only one person." She looked up. "Would you like to guess who?" Ryan said nothing. Silence can confess faster than words. Captain Lewis folded his arms. "Officer Cole, from this moment forward you are placed on administrative leave pending immediate review." The sentence struck harder because it was spoken so plainly. Ryan took a step forward. "Sir, over this?" Lewis's voice sharpened like a blade drawn halfway. "No. Over pattern." Naomi closed the notebook. "Today was not random, Officer Cole. It was scheduled oversight. We selected 3 locations citywide to observe officer discretion, bias indicators, and public conduct. You were not supposed to know where or when." Ryan stared at her, finally understanding the trap had never been hidden. It had been ordinary. "You set me up," he said weakly. Naomi's eyes held steady. "No. I watched you choose." A hush moved through the crowd so complete that even the food truck generator seemed quieter. Captain Lewis motioned to one of the federal staff members, who handed him a folder. He opened it, skimmed the first page, and exhaled slowly. "Ryan," he said, no longer calling him Officer Cole, "there are 6 prior complaints attached to your name that are being reopened today." Ryan's shoulders sank for the first time. Naomi picked up her cup and turned toward the cafe. "Captain," she said over her shoulder, "I still have not had lunch." Then she paused and looked back at Ryan one final time. "Assumption is expensive. You just sent yourself the bill." Naomi Carter stepped back into the cafe as if the sidewalk had merely been a brief inconvenience. The bell above the door chimed softly, and the smell of fresh espresso wrapped around the room like warmth after rain. Outside, the crowd remained gathered near the curb, but inside, conversation had dropped to a hush. People recognized the rare gravity of someone who did not need to announce authority because authority followed her anyway. Naomi returned to the counter, straightened the paper bag that had started the entire scene, and smiled at the barista who looked half stunned and half delighted. "I believe my lunch was interrupted," she said. The young man blinked twice, then laughed nervously. "Yes, it is on the house." Naomi shook her head. "No. Accountability should cost the right people." She placed a $10 bill on the counter. Through the front windows, Ryan Cole still stood beside his patrol SUV while Captain Daniel Lewis spoke with federal staff. The former officer looked smaller now, though he had not moved an inch. It is strange how quickly arrogance can lose height. Naomi accepted a fresh iced tea and moved to a table near the glass where she could observe the street without being part of it. She opened her notebook again. Every line was neat, timed, factual. No emotion. No exaggeration. Truth rarely needs decoration. A woman in her 60s approached slowly, clutching a shopping bag to her chest. "Excuse me," she said. "I just wanted to thank you." Naomi looked up. "For what?" The woman glanced outside. "For staying calm." Most people would have broken down. Naomi considered that for a moment. That is often what they count on. The woman nodded with moist eyes and quietly returned to her seat. Outside, another city unit arrived. Then another. Officers who once nodded casually at Ryan now kept their distance. None wanted to be seen too close to a headline in progress. Captain Lewis signaled toward the patrol SUV, and two supervisors began inventorying equipment. Ryan spoke rapidly, gesturing with both hands, but desperation always looks louder than reason. Naomi watched for a few seconds, then turned the page in her notebook. She wrote one line, "Subject attempted authority after losing credibility." At the next table, the two college students from the sidewalk had come inside. One leaned toward the other and whispered, not quietly enough, that smile was cold. Naomi did not look over. "No," she said gently. It was patient. They froze, then laughed in embarrassment. The room relaxed with them. Tension has limits once truth enters the building. Her phone vibrated across the table. The screen read Assistant Attorney General Monroe. Naomi answered. "Monroe." The voice on the other end carried brisk approval. "You work fast." Naomi glanced outside. "He worked faster." Monroe exhaled through a laugh. "Media is already calling." "Then they are late," Naomi replied. "Witness upload started 10 minutes ago." She ended the call and sipped her drink. On the sidewalk, Ryan suddenly looked toward the cafe window. Their eyes met through the glass. He seemed ready to plead, explain, bargain, maybe even apologize. Naomi simply held his gaze, calm and unreadable. Then she returned to her notebook as if he were no longer the most important thing in view. Sometimes being ignored teaches more than being confronted. Captain Lewis entered the cafe moments later, hat in hand. He approached her table carefully, the way people approach consequences they did not create but now must manage. "Director Carter," he said, "he has been relieved of duty. Internal Affairs is opening immediate review." Naomi nodded once. "Good." Lewis hesitated. "For what it is worth, not all of us are like him." Naomi closed the notebook. "I know," she said. "That is why I came." He absorbed that in silence. she stood, gathered her lunch, and looked toward the door where the crowd outside still lingered. "Captain, today was one officer." Her voice stayed low, but every word carried. "Tomorrow is culture." Lewis straightened unconsciously. "Understood." Naomi walked toward the exit. The room parted without being asked. As she reached the door, the barista called out, She turned. "Yes?" He smiled. That really was some smile. Naomi gave him the faintest hint of it again. "No," she said. That was a warning. By 3 o'clock, the video had crossed the city faster than traffic ever could. It moved through office group chats, neighborhood pages, newsroom inboxes, and family text threads with a speed reserved for moments people instantly recognize as larger than themselves. There was no dramatic soundtrack, no edited captions, no narrator telling viewers what to feel. Just a sidewalk, a uniform, a calm woman, and the exact second. Certainty began to collapse. Naomi Carter rode in the back seat of a black SUV heading toward police headquarters, reviewing witness notes on a tablet while Atlanta rolled past the tinted windows in streaks of steel and sunlight. Her federal team sat around her in practiced silence. They knew better than to interrupt concentration. Outside, billboards rose over the freeway, church steeples cut into the skyline, and summer clouds gathered slowly above the city. Inside the vehicle, Naomi highlighted 3 names from the witness list and sent follow-up requests. Then she opened a folder labeled Discretion Stops, Zone 3. Ryan Cole's name appeared more often than statistics could politely explain. "How long has this pattern been active?" she asked without looking up. Agent Melissa Grant answered from the front passenger seat. 18 months documented. Possibly longer. Naomi nodded once. "And complaints?" 6 formal. 11 informal. Most closed without findings. Naomi looked out the window for a moment. Without findings is often another phrase for without courage. No one disagreed. At headquarters, the atmosphere had changed before they even arrived. Officers near the front entrance stood straighter than usual. Civilian staff moved with hushed urgency. News vans lined the opposite curb, antenna masts pointed skyward like metal reeds. Cameras waited for anyone willing to become a statement. Captain Daniel Lewis met Naomi in the lobby, tie slightly loosened, eyes carrying the exhaustion of a man trying to repair damage while it was still spreading. "Conference room is ready," he said. "Internal affairs, legal counsel, command staff." Naomi stepped from the elevator with the same measured pace she had shown all day. "An Officer Cole." Lewis hesitated. "In interview holding." Naomi kept walking. "Good. Let him meet silence." They entered the conference room where a long polished table reflected fluorescent light in sharp bands. Command staff rose when she entered. Some did so from respect. Others from fear. Naomi could tell the difference immediately. She placed her notebook on the table and remained standing. "This review is not about one embarrassing video," she said. "It is about what that video revealed in 90 seconds. No one moved. She tapped the notebook lightly. Patterns survive where comfort protects them. Bias survives where paperwork buries it. Misconduct survives where decent people convince themselves it is someone else's problem. A deputy chief cleared his throat. "Director Carter, this department serves millions responsibly." Naomi met his eyes. Then responsible people should welcome accountability. The room went still again. Captain Lewis slid a stack of files toward her. Prior complaints, traffic stop data, demographic breakdowns, body camera gaps, disciplinary summaries. Naomi turned pages with calm precision. Every missing signature, every delayed review, every vague conclusion told its own story. Systems speak fluently when you know where to listen. "We begin with Zone 3, she said. Then supervisory approvals. Then complaint disposal practices. One commander shifted in his seat. This could take weeks. Naomi closed the file. It has taken years. Across town, Ryan Cole sat alone under bright lights in a small interview room, staring at a paper cup of water that had gone untouched. No radio on his shoulder. No badge at his chest. No sidewalk audience to command. Just time and reflection, two things he had avoided professionally. A monitor on the wall replayed the viral clip without sound. His own face looked unfamiliar to him now. Back in the conference room, an assistant entered and whispered to Captain Lewis. He nodded grimly. Mayor's office wants an update. Naomi gathered the first set of files into a neat stack. Tell them the truth, she said. The city did not suddenly get a problem today. She rose from her chair and looked around the room one person at a time. Today the problem got seen. Then she picked up her notebook and added one final line beneath the last entry of the day: exposure is not punishment. It is the beginning. Night settled over Atlanta in layers of amber streetlights and reflected glass, but police headquarters remained bright as a hospital corridor. The building hummed with printers, footsteps, elevators, and the quiet anxiety of people who knew. Tomorrow's headlines were already being written. Naomi Carter stood alone beside a 7th-floor window, looking down at the city she had spent years studying from reports, complaints, statistics, and sworn statements. Numbers could describe damage. They could never describe fatigue. Behind her, the conference room door opened and Captain Daniel Lewis entered carrying another stack of files held together by rubber bands and urgency. These are the archived complaints you requested, he said. Some go back 5 years. Naomi turned from the glass. Then we are already 5 years late. Lewis set the files on the table and rubbed his eyes. You do not waste words, do you? Naomi gave the faintest hint of a smile. Only when systems waste years. She opened the first file. Inside were familiar patterns disguised as isolated incidents. Citizens described disrespect. Supervisors described misunderstandings. Review boards described insufficient evidence. The same event could become 3 different stories depending on who wrote last. Naomi moved through page after page with steady precision. Missing camera footage. Delayed interviews. Witnesses never contacted. Recommendations quietly reduced. Accountability diluted until it became administrative mist. Lewis watched her work for a moment. I came up through this department believing most problems were a few bad choices by a few bad people, he said. Naomi did not look up. And now? He exhaled slowly. Now I think decent people can become part of bad systems by calling them normal. Naomi finally met his eyes. That realization is where reform starts. Across the hall, Ryan Cole remained in the interview room. No one had questioned him for nearly an hour. The clock on the wall had become his loudest company. He had asked twice for updates and received none. Silence can feel unfair when someone has spent years controlling who gets heard. A lieutenant entered at last and placed a printed form in front of him. Administrative suspension pending investigation. Surrender of credentials. No field contact. No media comment. Ryan stared at the page as if outrage might rewrite it. This is because of one misunderstanding, he said. The lieutenant's expression did not move. No, Ryan. This is because one camera found the truth. He left without another word. Downstairs, local reporters gathered behind barricades while city staff crossed the lobby carrying folders like shields. Naomi descended to the main floor with 2 federal agents and Captain Lewis beside her. Flashbulbs popped through the glass doors. Questions rose before anyone stepped outside. Director Carter, is the department under federal review? Was this a targeted sting? Will officers be fired tonight? Naomi paused just inside the entrance. No statements yet, Lewis said quietly. Naomi shook her head. One statement. She stepped through the doors into the wash of cameras and microphones. The crowd surged forward until security held the line. Naomi did not raise her voice. She did not need to. Today was not about one woman and one officer, she said. It was about what happens when authority forgets it is borrowed from the public. The noise dropped instantly. No badge grants permission to demean. No title grants immunity from review. And no citizen should need a camera to be treated with dignity. Pens moved fast. Cameras held steady. Somewhere in the back, someone whispered, "Wow." Naomi continued. "We will follow facts, not panic. Evidence, not excuses. Conduct, not image." She stepped back without taking a single question. Sometimes leaving at the right moment says more than staying. Inside the lobby, Lewis looked at her with something close to relief. "You just calmed the city," he said. Naomi adjusted the strap of her bag. "No," she replied. "I clarified it." Her phone vibrated. Another message from Washington. Another request. Another city watching. She silenced it and looked toward the elevator. "Captain, I want supervisor interviews starting at 7 a.m. Lewis checked his watch. "That is less than 9 hours away." Naomi walked toward the doors. "Then they should get some sleep." She reached the elevator, then added without turning around, "Tomorrow we stop reviewing symptoms." The doors opened. "Tomorrow we diagnose culture." At 6:58 the next morning, police headquarters looked cleaner than usual. Which is what institutions often do when they expect inspection. Floors shined brighter, desks were straighter, uniforms sharper, greetings louder. But polish has limits. It cannot cover patterns once someone knows where to look. Naomi Carter entered through the main doors carrying the same leather notebook and the same calm expression that had unsettled an entire city the day before. Conversations lowered by instinct. Officers who had never met her suddenly stood as if they had. Captain Daniel Lewis met her near security with a folder already open. "We have 12 supervisors waiting," he said. Union Council requested presence for 3 of them. Naomi kept walking toward the elevator. "They are welcome to observe honesty." On the 7th floor, the conference room had become an accountability assembly line. Coffee cups, legal pads, personnel charts, complaint maps, shift rosters. Names connected to names, approvals connected to incidents, silence connected to outcomes. Naomi stood before a whiteboard marked Zone 3 and drew one clean circle around a cluster of repeated complaints. "Start here," she said. Behavior rarely acts alone. It is usually supervised. The first lieutenant entered at 7 on the dot. Mid-50s, polished shoes, practiced confidence. He sat, adjusted his tie, and offered the smile of a man who had survived many reviews by sounding helpful. "Lieutenant Harris," Naomi began, "how many informal complaints against Officer Cole crossed your desk?" Harris folded his hands. "Informal complaints are difficult to quantify." Naomi opened a file. "I counted 11. Harris blinked once. "Those were citizen frustrations, not policy matters." Naomi slid 3 pages toward him. All 3 described the same conduct. Selective stops, disrespectful language, unsupported suspicion. Harris glanced down, then back up. "We rely on officer discretion." Naomi's voice remained even. Discretion without standards becomes preference. Preference without accountability becomes pattern. Captain Lewis wrote the line down without meaning to. The second supervisor blamed staffing shortages. The third blamed public perception. The fourth blamed paperwork delays. Excuses rotated through the room wearing different jackets. Naomi listened to each one without interruption, then matched every explanation to timestamps, signatures, body camera logs, and ignored recommendations. Facts have patience that excuses do not. By mid-morning, fatigue began replacing defensiveness. A sergeant named Elena Torres entered carrying no lawyer, no prepared statement, and no visible interest in protecting anyone. She sat upright and spoke before being asked. We all knew Ryan was trouble. The room went still. Lewis looked up sharply. Naomi simply nodded. Continue. Torres exhaled. He targeted certain neighborhoods for what he called easy contacts. If complaints came in, he joked they would die in review. Some supervisors corrected him privately, but nobody wanted conflict, numbers loss, or union noise. She looked around the room. So people chose comfort. Naomi studied her for a moment. Why speak now? Torres answered without hesitation. Because yesterday I watched one woman do in 5 minutes what the rest of us failed to do in 5 years. No one in the room challenged her. Across the hall, printers ran non-stop as records were copied for federal review. Downstairs, reporters waited for leaks like fishermen reading water. Upstairs, truth moved slower but deeper. Near noon, Naomi asked for Ryan Cole's performance evaluations. Lewis handed them over reluctantly. Consistent marks for productivity. Strong initiative. Assertive presence. Minimal references to community trust. Naomi turned the pages carefully. You rewarded volume, she said. Then acted surprised by method. Lewis did not defend it. You are right. Naomi closed the folder. Good. That saves time. She stepped to the whiteboard and drew a second circle around the first. Inner circle is misconduct, she said. Outer circle is permission. The room absorbed the sentence in silence. She capped the marker and looked at every supervisor one by one. Yesterday an officer embarrassed your department. Today we determine whether he was an exception. She let the pause do its work. Or an example. By early afternoon, the building no longer felt like headquarters. It felt like a mirror. Every hallway reflected tension, every closed office door suggested private calculations, every ringing phone carried the possibility of another question nobody wanted to answer. Naomi Carter stood at the center of the 7th floor conference room while updated charts were pinned to the wall around her. Complaint clusters. Supervisor chains. Stop data by neighborhood. Response times by race. Review outcomes by district. Once separated, each document had looked manageable. Together, they told the truth in full volume. Captain Daniel Lewis entered carrying a sealed envelope from Human Resources. He handed it to Naomi without speaking. She opened it, read the first page, then passed it back. Official termination recommendation for Ryan Cole, Lewis said quietly. Pending final board signature. Naomi nodded once. Appropriate. But insufficient. Lewis did not argue. He was learning that consequences for one person can become camouflage for everyone else. At 1 o'clock, command staff reconvened. No polished confidence this time. No defensive smiles. The room carried the heavy stillness of people who had finally understood that procedure would not save them from facts. Naomi remained standing. Officer Cole's employment status will be resolved through your internal process, she said. My concern is the environment that protected him. She pressed a remote, and a screen lit behind her with a timeline stretching 18 months. Complaints received. Reviews delayed. Camera gaps. Reassignments instead of discipline. Commendations issued during pending concerns. The deputy chief who had spoken confidently the day before lowered his eyes to the table. This was not hidden, Naomi continued. It was normalized. No one challenged the word. Across town, Ryan Cole sat at his kitchen table in a silent apartment, still in yesterday's clothes, watching news coverage he could not stop himself from watching. Analysts debated policy. Residents shared stories. Commentators replayed the sidewalk footage frame by frame. But the moment people returned to most was not his voice or Naomi's credential. It was her smile. The instant she seemed to know something he did not. Ryan muted the television and stared at the blank screen, where his own reflection looked like a stranger wearing regret. Back at headquarters, Naomi placed a second document on the table. Federal recommendations for immediate corrective action. Independent complaint intake. Randomized stop audits. Mandatory bias review training tied to promotion eligibility. Supervisor accountability metrics. Early warning intervention systems. Public reporting dashboards. Captain Lewis read the first page and exhaled. This changes everything. Naomi met his eyes. That is the point. A commander near the end of the table shifted uneasily. With respect, Director Carter, morale is already low. Naomi answered without pause. Morale built on avoiding accountability is not morale. It is comfort. The sentence moved through the room like weather. Several people wrote it down. Others pretended not to. Downstairs in the lobby, citizens had begun gathering quietly near the public comment board. Some came with old complaint numbers folded in their pockets. Some came just to watch. A retired teacher told a reporter, "For the first time, the building looks nervous instead of us." On the 7th floor, Captain Lewis signed the first reform order with a pen that shook slightly in his hand. Then another. Then another. Each signature sounded small on paper, yet heavy in consequence. Naomi collected copies and placed them in her bag. "Implementation starts now," she said. "Not next quarter. Not after headlines fade." Lewis stood. "You have my word." Naomi gave him a measured look. "Keep actions. Words are overstocked in this building." A faint smile moved through the room despite itself. Tension sometimes breaks when truth is spoken cleanly. As the meeting ended, an assistant rushed in holding a phone. "Director Carter, national outlets want an interview." Naomi walked toward the door. "Decline." "All of them?" the assistant asked. Naomi paused only long enough to answer. "If they need a face, they missed the story." She stepped into the hallway where officers and staff quietly moved aside to let her pass. Through the far window, sunlight struck the city in broad gold lines. Behind her, a department was finally beginning to feel what the public had felt for years. Uncertainty. 3 weeks later, the city had learned a new sound inside police headquarters. It was not sirens, radios, or hurried footsteps. It was doors opening. Complaint offices once hidden behind appointments and delays now welcomed walk-ins from 8 in the morning until 6 at night. Dashboards once buried in internal systems now glowed on public screens in the lobby. Supervisors once praised only for numbers now answered for conduct. Change rarely arrives like thunder. More often, it comes like locks quietly turning. Naomi Carter returned on a warm Friday afternoon for the final compliance review. The same lobby that had once stiffened at her presence now greeted her with respectful nods and clear eyes. Citizens sat in chairs filling out forms while staff members actually helped them. A young officer held the door for an elderly man and waited without impatience. Small scenes matter. They reveal what culture is becoming when no one thinks they are being graded. Captain Daniel Lewis met Naomi near the elevators with less strain in his face than she had ever seen. "You should see Zone 3, he said. "Stops are down, complaints are down, community meetings are full." Naomi walked beside him. "And trust?" Lewis gave a rueful smile. "Harder to measure." Naomi nodded. "Then it is probably the most important number." On the 7th floor, charts had changed color. Red clusters reduced to yellow. Yellow to green. Training completion rates rose. Supervisor response times shortened. Random audits uncovered smaller issues before they became public wounds. It was progress, not perfection, and Naomi respected the difference. Perfection is usually theater. Progress leaves paperwork. She reviewed files for 2 hours, asked precise questions, rejected 1 polished presentation, approved 3 corrective plans, and requested 6-month follow-up monitoring. When she finally closed the last folder, the room exhaled together. Lewis stood near the window. "I owe you thanks," he said. Naomi placed her notebook in her bag. "No. You owe consistency." He accepted that with a nod. "Fair enough. Across town, Ryan Cole worked behind the counter of a shipping store on the edge of Midtown. He folded boxes, printed labels, and avoided the television mounted near the ceiling whenever local news came on. People recognized him sometimes. Some whispered. Some stared. Most simply moved on with their day. Humility can be harsh when first assigned, but it can also be educational. He had learned to say yes, yes sir, and thank you without resentment. He had learned what it felt like to be judged by one visible mistake while carrying many invisible ones. That afternoon, Naomi stopped at the store on her way to the airport. She needed an overnight envelope sent to Washington. Ryan looked up from the register and froze for only a second before lowering his eyes. "Good afternoon," he said quietly. Naomi placed the envelope on the counter. "Good afternoon." He weighed the package, printed the label, and kept his tone professional. No swagger. No performance. Just work. "That will be $14.60. Naomi handed him a 20. He gave back change with careful hands. Silence stood between them for a moment, not hostile, just honest. Finally Ryan spoke. "I was wrong." Naomi regarded him steadily. "Yes." He swallowed. "I mean more than that day." Naomi took the receipt. "Then make sure the lesson lasts longer than the consequence." Ryan nodded once. There was nothing else to say. She turned toward the door, then paused. "For what it is worth," she said without looking back, "you were not ruined by one mistake." He lifted his eyes. Naomi opened the door to the sunlight outside. "You were warned by it." She stepped onto the sidewalk where weeks earlier a crowd had gathered to witness authority stumble. Today people passed by laughing, carrying groceries, hurrying to meetings, living ordinary lives under an ordinary sky. Naomi smiled to herself, smaller now, softer. Some smiles expose arrogance. Others confirm healing. As she disappeared into the moving city, the words she had written on the first day proved true in every direction around her. Exposure was not punishment. It was the beginning.